Okay, let's begin the session. This is a very nice opportunity for us to discuss the issues raised by Dr. Neil Martin yesterday, for the very important issue in the lives of all of us in the coming years of the recognition of the professional status of behavior analysts. It's also a nice opportunity for me to, I hope, be able to indicate to my students that I actually do speak fluently a language. Though the truth is that I struggle almost as much in English as I do in Greek, unfortunately. I never really acquired Greek, but I have managed to lose English. We'll see what we can do. By way of introduction to the table, I'm just going to briefly read to you the abstract because it sets up, I think, nicely the issues that we'll be dealing with at this table. In recent years, the significant practical advantages of human services provision, comprehensively based in a natural science of behavior, has become widely recognized, particularly in educational, therapeutic, and vocational services for persons characterized by pervasive difficulties in the acquisition of age-typical social and academic repertoires in people with special needs. The provision of such services requires extensive scientific training and professionally supervised experience in the application of experimentally derived principles and methods to the solution of human problems, generating skills that develop through the behavior analyst career in continuous interaction with his or her peers and with the ever-advancing research literature. Persons who represent themselves as behavior analysts without having the requisite skills in the application of behavioral philosophy and its experimental science harm the public interest, both in their provision of inferior services and in the resultant misperception of the effectiveness of an applied science of behavior in the persons inadequately served. In recognition of the right to effective human services, extensive efforts have been made to certify the existence of the requisite complex repertoire of behavior in persons identifying themselves to the public as behavior analysts in the ongoing efforts of the Behavior Analyst Certification Board. Reaching a general consensus among behavior analysts concerning the content of this repertoire and of how it is most effectively acquired, assessed, and maintained is not an easy matter. It is further complicated by regional differences in languages, legal and professional codes, and economic conditions. The solution to such difficulties is to be found in an open dialogue and reasoned experimentation among the interested parties, guided by the principles of the very philosophy and science that unite us. The present roundtable is a forum for the advancement of this discussion. And I give you first Dr. Neil Martin. We'll each make a brief statement, and then the most important thing is to open a dialogue with the Hellenic Community of Behavior Analysts.
Kalispera. An easy audience to please, obviously. Okay, I just want to show you a couple of slides that I showed you yesterday, just by way of reminding you and to in the context of this discussion. Okay, so first, as I said yesterday, the BACB are absolutely committed to international development. So it's inherent in our global mission and it's inherent in our global vision. So we want to increase the number of behavior analysts and training programs around the world, and we want to make everyone aware of the diversity of practice around the world. Most of the people that become BCBAs or BCABAs do so by completing what we call an approved course sequence, which I talked about yesterday. So by far, the majority do that. So 90% of individuals around the world at least they meet the course requirement through one of our approved course sequences. And you have some in Greece already. So we're not starting at the very beginning. I speak at many conferences where I try and encourage and motivate universities and faculty to start course sequences. You already have them. So that's a very positive starting point to this discussion. However, there are only 4, and actually they are at 2 different institutions. So you have BCBA and BCABA courses at 2 different institutions. But hey, that's still more than some countries have in Europe at the moment. A more disappointing figure, you have 4 course sequences, but you only have 3 currently certificates in Greece. And I think we need to do something about that, and I think you should want to do something about that. And yeah. Now, and why this is important, and I mentioned some of these yesterday, but I want to emphasize maybe a couple on here. As Robert said from the abstract, this is probably most importantly about consumer protection. So how do people know if they ask for behavior analytic services that they are actually getting behavior analytic services? And as I said yesterday, this ought to be defined by who we are, our professional training and a credential, rather than the fact that someone says, I can do ABA, as many people say they can, and these individuals are springing up all over the world. That's a concern. The other one on this list I want to highlight is, and I didn't really talk about this so much yesterday, is the one about portability. Now, I think this could be very relevant for individuals in Greece. If you become a BCBA or a BCABA, that is recognized in so many different countries around the world. Now, I don't mean to say that it's recognized as a unique profession in the governments recognize behavior analysts, but certainly organizations, schools, centers, and many individuals in these countries do. So that if in Greece you become a certificate, a BCBA or a BCABA, that is a very important and portable credential for you to take with you to work in different countries and eventually come back to work in Greece, of course. I'm not encouraging you to leave Greece, but these are valued credentials in many different countries, and it could be a wonderful opportunity for you to take your wonderful language and your culture to somewhere to work for a while and then come back and help the rest of us develop this process in Greece. So, thank you.
Katerina Dounavi directs a graduate program at Queen's University in Belfast. As most of you know her from her wonderful presentation, both at the previous conference, the first conference of the Hellenic Association for Behavior Analysis, and also for her wonderful one-week course in the EABA summer school in Rethymno this summer. Welcome, Katerina.
Thank you. Hi. I would like to talk about 3 points, which I think we need to start from somewhere. So I've brought with me 3 ideas that I think would help us develop the science in Greece and be at a point in 5 years from now where we have, say, 12 or 15 BCBAs and at least 1 university-based program here. We have a master's in ABA in Belfast, and we deliver that online partly. So, and we are not the only ones. So there are online programs, but these are not in Greek. And as Robert has pointed out, it is very important, because you will be working in Greek, it is very important to study in Greek as well, and so to have the vocabulary and be able to engage with your clients and service recipients in Greek, and then train other people in Greek. So I think that the BACB credentials offer an excellent opportunity, an excellent framework where we know what we need to know, both in theory and in practice, and we have a set of ethical standards that serve as an excellent guide as well. So the contents are there. And in the last 5 or 6 years, maybe a little bit more, we have a couple of excellent books in Greek as well, about behavior analysis. So I think that the first resources are already there. The BECB offers an excellent framework to start from there and develop more resources. I would like to let you know that the ethics, the ethical and professional code of the BECB is now available in Greek and is on the BECB website. And we started translating the code, the ethical code first, because I think that whatever we do, the most important thing is being ethical and professional and doing whatever we do in the best possible way. So please go on the BECB website and check the BECB ethical code. It's now available in Greek, and we're working on having more documents translated very soon. So my first point is that we have an excellent framework. I do believe we have to seek certification because these people who have, as Neil mentioned before, who have standards, who have met standards, we know that it's quality control that allows us to check the quality of the services provided. So it's something we do need. It's not an American thing. Well, it's clear now that there are so many international certificates that it's not just something that is happening elsewhere. So that was my first point. I think there is a big need for BCBAs to increase in Greece. And on the masters at Queen's, we have a few Greek students, and they just do brilliantly. And the summer school in Crete, organized by the European Association, by Robert and his team, made it completely clear to me that students' knowledge and mainly motivation is there. So, and I think motivation is the first thing, the most important thing. So there are people who really want to do things very, very well, to learn more and develop. So, you know that academic structures in Greece are sometimes complex. They are definitely different from academic structures and the academic system elsewhere in the UK or in the US. So I think we need to find a way of maybe, well, I don't know how, maybe Robert will give us an idea in a moment of somehow overcoming difficulties set by the system in the academia so as to be able to offer something, either in collaboration with other universities in Europe or, well, just then by Greek University. I think that's just the framework. So my second point is about the economic situation, which is something we need to take into account. I was talking to Neil a minute ago. I think that because maintaining a certification is a costly process, you need to pay for your exam, and you need to pay your fees every year, and then you need to recertify every 2 years. And then you need to acquire continuous education credits as well every year, every 2 years. So it's a costly process. I think, therefore, that the BECB could, by following other professional bodies' way of doing things, that they could adapt the fees, the maintenance fees, to every country's income per capita, so that people in Greece do not have to pay the same amount. I think we fall in category B at the moment. Hopefully we'll just stay there. So that it becomes easier for students and professionals to maintain certification. So that was just a suggestion for Neil to take on board. He'll tell us in a minute that they are in the process of taking that on board, which is brilliant. Well, I think these were my main points. So I will pass the microphone or to Lillian. Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Good afternoon from me as well. I'm going to talk sitting down because Neil needs to do something over there. So yes, my name is Lillian Pelios. I am a behavior analyst, not a certified behavior analyst, so I hope I don't get kicked out of here anytime, but a behavior analyst by training. And I'm going to play a little bit devil's advocate and give everybody some food for thought, my colleagues here and you as well. Neil has shared a lot of information about the Behavior Analyst Certification Board and the history and the philosophy. I do want to share with you guys that there is some disagreement within the field as to the degree to which being certified as a behavior analyst by the board is equivalent to the broader understanding of what board certification means. And we talked a little bit about this with Neil yesterday. The standards for board certification in the more general notion are much more rigorous than those for behavior analysts. And so some of our colleagues make the argument that we need to increase the standards and so on and so forth. And I bring this up because the question is a behavior analyst certification right for Greece in 2015? So the question applies, the question generalizes to, is the Behavior Analyst Certification Board equivalent to board certification in general? This may be a difficult notion to comprehend because in Greece, I think we have, and this may sound negative, but it's the truth, we have very little going on as far as credentialing goes. We don't have any official credentialing sources for psychologists whatsoever. It is standard practice in Greece for people who graduate with a bachelor's degree to be licensed to practice as psychologists. I don't know to what degree this is true in other parts of the world, but in no other country. I wasn't sure, so I couldn't say that, but thank you for that information. So,
just to correct you a bit, it's not just that they have to have an undergraduate degree, but they also have to have a clean chest X-ray.
So
it's true. It's literally true.
So I think we have to. There's a lot to consider in terms of advancement and development and evolution, even on a cultural and societal basis, and appreciation for credentials. Despite the infighting between behavior analysts and the fact that there are some inconsistencies between the more general understanding of board certification and what the Behavior Analyst Certification Board requires, I believe that a BA certification is right for Greece. In 2015, it was right in 1998, when they first started talking about certifying behavior analysts. It is a place to start. We need to start somewhere to gain recognition. This is how it started out in the States like this. And so today we can have the discussion about more rigorous standards and achieving higher levels for future behavior analysts and so on and so forth. So I believe, even though I'm a little bit of an outsider in the group in the sense that I'm not certified, behavior analysis is very important to me. It's not just something that I studied. It is a worldview and a lifestyle, and its dissemination is very important, both on a societal level and on a scientific level. So that's my comment. Thank you.
I have recently completed the process of certification as a behavior analyst, which is sort of a strange, yes, thank you, which is sort of a strange process and a strange feeling if something that you've done for more years than I'd like to tell publicly, long time, to then have this credential scrutinized by your peers, but sort of younger peers for the most part. A strange sort of feeling, but I have engaged in this process with significant prompting from Neil Martin, as a part of our program of generating supporting the natural science of behavior. I told you I wouldn't be able to speak English. Supporting the natural science of behavior in Greece, for all of the reasons that we've described earlier. I mean, as a way of protecting people that are looking for the best kind of services available for a family member and for themselves, to have a way of identifying individuals who are, in fact, scientifically and professionally qualified to give those kinds of services. It is true that we don't, especially in behaviorally related services in Greece, we don't have a very strong tradition. I don't think there is any other place in the world that you can get a license to practice psychology, any sort of psychology, with an undergraduate degree with minimum supervised practical experience. I don't know when that's going to change, but it does have to change. My point, though, is my interest is not in renovating Greek psychology, but in establishing Greek behavior analysis. So that's really not my... I would hope someday somebody will address the issue of certification of psychologists, but our science is in no way limited to people that are in professional practice of psychology. Of course, we have applications, as Neil said yesterday, everywhere people behave. And not even just people. We have also applications in animal management, everywhere that organisms behave. The science of behavior can be usefully applied there. Now, with a great deal of effort for the last 20 years, we have been working to try and establish behavior analysis within the public university system in Greece. First at the University of Crete, and then 11 years ago at Panteion University. Both universities have been very, very supportive of our efforts. But as I said yesterday, Pandeio has really given a full-scale now, full operating laboratory and a full range of courses. Here at Pandeio we have 7 undergraduate courses in behavior analysis. I don't know of another university program in the world over that offers at an undergraduate level 3 basic courses, a laboratory course, supervised practicum training, and a 2-semester undergraduate thesis, many of which you've seen in the past couple of days. So that's just wonderful what they've been able to do for us here. The problem with that is that, and though we've established a significant beachhead here at Panteion University, at the same time we've had this terrible economic crisis that under other circumstances we would already be having behavior analysts taking university positions at the University of Athens, at Dounavi, in Crete. But at the same time that we have been able, with the support of both the University of Crete and Panteion University, to establish this wonderful undergraduate program, if I might say so myself, in behavior analysis, our ability to build on that within the university system is not only limited in the past couple of years, but as you all know, is going to be very much limited in the future. There's not going to be any new university positions for a long, long time. We have now, I think, I was one of the last hires of our university. I'm here of our department. I'm here for 11 years. We have many people leaving with retirement. These positions are not replaced. And even though people have been very supportive of us, if there's ever new positions, even I, as a member of the psychology department, I wouldn't say, let's take another behavior analyst, because we have very many, we have no school I would like to have a behavioral school psychologist, of course, but we have to have a school psychologist, we have to have neuropsychology. I mean, even when we will begin to have new hires, it's going to be a long time before we have hires in behavior analysis. So, how are we going to move this project ahead? Professional certification is a way of generating and supporting training in behavior analysis outside of the public university. So we have a number of people that are qualified to teach behavior analysis, leaving from our program, and they have no place that they can extend these skills to other individuals. The fact that you can obtain a professional certification by this kind of training will help us in our program in Greece, and will also help us in extending behavior analysis beyond our borders. Because my hope and interest, as all of ours, is that these wonderful things that we've learned get to the hands of everybody throughout the world. So I'm here in Greece. I want to build it here. But if the people working in this country can also help in generating in Eastern Europe, in the Middle East, behavior analysis, that would be wonderful as well. Because as you can see from the data that Neil showed us yesterday, this thing is really taking off. So if we can get our people qualified, even though we have very limited income for behavior analytic services in the country, certified behavior analysts will be able to begin to fill the need for training other individuals in our country and also abroad. So it is, as Neil said, an opportunity with this certification to be able to work abroad, learn new skills, collect some money, then come back and help us to build what we're doing here. And even if you don't leave, you will have an opportunity to generate income providing behavior analytic training services to other individuals, supervision services and on-hand services to other individuals. All of that provides us with a way of getting out of the economic block that we have of developing our philosophy and science within our country and contributing to the development in other places as well. So for all of these reasons, I'm very much in favor of having a workable certification and training program. Having done this, having become qualified and having read the materials that are quite often used in training for the BACB certification, I do have some concerns about the way in which behavior, our philosophy and science, is being taught. And where does this come from? The vast majority of people that are working in applied behavior analysis are working in problems in developmental disabilities, autism, Down syndrome, various forms of retardation in education programs. That's an application of, and the concern for protecting consumers of these kinds of services was the original basis for mostly for people working in services for people with special educational needs from a very young age. Extensive, systematic arrangement of behavior-environment relationships for long periods of time. This is, of course, a very important application of our philosophy and science. But it is by no means, as I said before, the only application of our science. Now, the BACB has, as Neil mentioned yesterday, in collaboration with other behavior analysts, with an interaction of people in the field, have developed a curriculum of what a certified behavior analyst should know. this list does not say what specific applications a person should be able to do on the basis of these competencies. But because in the universities in the States and abroad are chiefly involved in training people to work with problems in developmental disabilities, the BACB does not, correct me if I'm wrong, does not recommend any book or training curriculum. The books that are used are almost entirely applications. They of course describe the basic science, but the applications are almost entirely in the area of developmental disabilities. So it's very possible in preparing for the BACB exam that all of these, the great majority of examples, or most of the examples, are with an extremely limited range of applications of behavior analysis. And the exam is largely based, as it should be based, even if it's a multiple choice exam, it's mostly based on descriptions of scenarios, different kinds of situations in which we need to generate an intervention program, we need to evaluate an intervention program, we need to make changes in an intervention program. On the examination also, most of these the examples are based on interventions with developmental disabilities. And one gets the sense that I'm not being trained as an applied behavior analyst. I'm being trained as an applied educator in developmental disabilities. Now, that is certainly is not consistent with the range of applications of behavior analysts, and it's not consistent with the mission of the Behavior Analyst Certification Board. But it is driven, if you like, by aspects of the market, by the current market for services of behavior analysts. Now, that puts us in a particularly difficult situation here for our program here in Greece, because as many of you know, and as you can guess from the presentations of the course of this weekend, although our students also work, and the best practical training, the best first practical training in the application of behavior analysis is with individuals with developmental disabilities, because it's much easier, because they require extensive long-term systematic arrangement of environmental conditions, and because you can see very clearly the effect or non-effect of your particular intervention. Even if what you're interested in doing in the long run is working with people with so-called personality disorders or depressive conditions or anxiety disorders, the best start is under conditions in which you can see directly the relationship between the environmental manipulations and the behavior of the individual. An even better start before working with people with developmental disabilities is working with non-human organisms. The best way to start is work with pigeons, because then very clearly you can see the direct effect under very limited circumstances, and that's why we work in this environment in generating new principles of behavior, because it's very clear then which of the arrangements of environmental circumstances have been effective and have not been effective. But our students are trained from the beginning of their training and throughout their training here with applications and understanding not only developmental disabilities, but developmental problems, but also behavioral problems of high-functioning children, adolescents, and adults. And what I'm trying to say is there's no inconsistency there with the principles of the BACB. There is an inconsistency with how it's trained, with the application of that. So, yeah.
Let me just respond to some of those points. Oh, now, okay, now it's on. Sorry. Okay, let me just respond to some of those points, and then we'll open it up for questions, because I think that'll be more interesting. Absolutely agree, Robert. The BACB is quite a unique well, actually it's a very unique organisation in that it is offering an international certification, and there are, as far as I know, no other organisations that offer international certification. It's usually national, country-by-country certification. And I explained yesterday that the competencies that are designed, that behaviour analysts have to be taught, have to know, and are examined on, are determined by the field, not by the BACB. So it's hardly surprising that if the majority work in the area of developmental disabilities, then that's going to quite obviously shape that process. But because we're aware of that, and part of our mission is about diversification, we are very aware of that, and we're working towards making sure that it's broadened in its scope. And actually, if you are a well-trained behaviour analyst, you should be able to turn your hand to any application. And interesting, I was involved in a discussion, a BACB organised discussion several years ago, where we thought that we could develop an additional specialty credential or designation to add to the BCBA. And the obvious initial specialty credential to look at was an autism credential. So the idea was that you would become a BCBA, and then with additional autism expertise, you would be a BCBA autism specialist or a BCBA developmental disability specialist, and then eventually a BACB or BCBA OBM specialist, and so on. And what was really interesting about that discussion is that we agreed after 3 days that there were no additional competencies that we could think of that were behaviour analytic that we could add that were autism specific. I mean, obviously, if you work within the field of autism, you should know a lot about autism. And if you work within the field of OBM, you should know a lot about behaviour management. Thank you. But there are no additional behaviour analytic competencies that we could identify. So that's a great thing. That suggests that we've honed the task list to one that's generic in nature. In response to Lillian's point about standards, again, I agree. Part of the difficulty of starting something that's international in scope is that if you make the standards too tough at the beginning, then there will be large proportions of individuals around the world that are just never going to get their foot in through the door. So it's part of an ongoing shaping process. So we're using the principles of our own science to design a credential, gradually tightening the standards. I mean, since 1998, there have been something like 60 or 70 incremental increases to the standards involved. And in response to Katerina's point about the economic crisis and what we may be able to do about that, I've already had that discussion, and as soon as we're able to implement a new IT system, which will be weeks rather than months, your fees and any fees that you pay the BACB will be calculated according to the geographical region you live in. So those of you living in Greece, your fees will be much cheaper than individuals living in the UK and the US. So that's happening, just not now, but very, very soon.
I have one comment that I want to say that that involves the issue that Robert addressed about a focus on applications that come from the area of developmental disabilities. And then Neil said that if you're a good behavior analyst, that shouldn't count. But I think it does count because generalization is not a problem just for special needs populations. This is a conclusion that I've come to in the many years that I've been in the field. It is a problem of humanity. It is not easy to generalize applications from different populations. And when you're asked to, how many questions was it you said that you have to finish in 4 hours?
150.
You have to answer 150 questions that I'm sure are pretty demanding in 4 hours. It's difficult to be making those generalizations and conclusions about populations with which you're not used to working on the spot. So this is a personal, I'm grateful that the BCBA is focused on developmental disabilities because this is my area and it makes it easier for the people that I represent to succeed in these exams, I would hope.
But the BACB is not focused on developmental disabilities
or
autism. The BACB is focused on what the field does. It's evolving in line with what the field does. And when the field evolves further, the BACB will evolve further to accommodate that. So, I mean, you know, as Robert said, there are so many issues to which we could turn our attention where behavior analysis would add, well, it always adds something good. So we should be turning our hands to solving all of these problems. Yeah.
There is a debate about whether behavior analysts should be recognized by professional bodies like the Σύλλογος Ψυχολόγων, the Psychological Association, or not, because some people would say, well, no, it's a separate profession, and we might agree with that. But I'm wondering, should we start from somewhere and get some kind of recognition by, say, the Medical Association or the Psychological Association, or teachers' college, or should we start working from somewhere? I know that in Greece, unfortunately, clinical psychologists or educational psychologists, correct me if that has changed, are not designated, are not protected titles at the moment.
It's just psychologists.
Yes, which is very unfortunate. So I don't know if it's realistic to even be thinking about behavior analysts as a specialty when clinical psychologists are not yet recognized. So I don't know if it's a name that is achievable in the next 10 or 15 years. It might be too optimistic to think about that. But maybe we could start exploring how people have gone about that, for example, in the UK, Neil. I know you have experience on that. And see if we could get something like that going here in Greece. Get it started at least. Which means start talking with professional bodies and see whether we would fit as specialty.
I think the problem with that now, sorry, we'll let you ask a question in a minute, because, oh, yeah, no, please, go ahead.
I think that, actually, I think that a lot of these problems and limitations would be solved if we would actually follow and respond to international regulations when it comes to the profession. And I think this all comes back, it all comes back to how giving license here is formulated as a process. I'm afraid this will never be feasible unless the process of licensure doesn't change here in Greece. And I'll give you an example. As I was going through the recommendations of the International Board of Certification for behavioral analysts, as I was reading through them, I seem to remember that one of the recommendations is that in every case, in every country, the board abides to the national regulations when it comes to licensure. So technically what that means is that I, as a behavioral psychologist trained in the US, with a postdoctoral fellowship in Germany, I'm accredited by the BPS as a psychologist, and I'm associate fellow, and from the American Psychological Association. Still, I have issues with my licensure here in Greece. I had to go through the whole SAEC process, which, as you all may know, is very slow in process. Now, what is the problem technically for me? If I want to become a certified behavioral analyst, because I have the training for that, but I would be more than willing to go through the certification, and retaining the certification, that is a costly process. So what's the point for me to do that if I will not be able to work here in Greece, and if I cannot, apply this notion of portability of my credentials, my academic credentials, in where I am? I decided to come back to Greece after 10 years abroad because I wanted to offer something here, but I cannot really do that, and I cannot, I cannot promote this process because there are all these problems. So I think that my reflection to this is that if we are to be looking for something that promotes the whole thing, is that we have to go back to the origin of the problem, and that would, deal with the different divisions in terms of teachers and researchers and clinical psychologists and neuropsychologists and we have all that in the UK. We have all that in the US, but we don't have that here in Greece. And that is a big problem. Even in the goal that you all share in terms of the dissemination and the expansion of the field, because I would not be willing to give all this money if I won't be able to be licensed, because my first, let's say, recommendation, I don't have that problem, but imagine if I did. That is a problem, and I'm afraid that we have to take steps, like in tandem. That's the point that I'm trying to make. I know that we need to focus on something, but as we can see, things do not seem to limit themselves in one special, like niche of the field, but it goes beyond that. So I think that we should all be thinking about this a little bit more hard. That's my reflection when it comes to that. Thank you.
I couldn't agree more with what you're saying, and in tandem is the magic word. So this means that we need to go ahead with the BCBA certification, and people need to get out there and get trained, because once we have a critical body of certified behavior analysts doing the good work, using best practices, proving how this works with a real-life population, not just in the books, as some people may perceive it to be, then we can start rallying up advocacy groups. This is another thing that's non-existent in Greece, advocacy. We don't have advocacy. We don't have advocacy groups. We have somatia. Again, my bias, I work with children with autism, so I'm always going to bring the issue back to developmental disabilities. The rest of you can move it into the other directions. But even the somatia that are here are plagued by ideology, politics. They have their own little agendas that they're trying to push. Say it? Ideation. Okay, so we can't come together as a group, as small as we are as a country, and even smaller as we are as a community of behavior analysts, to advocate for consumers and for ourselves as a profession. So I think we need to get out there and do the work. When we do that, we'll get some return.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say the problem at the moment is that there are so few identifiable behaviour analysts in Greece that if you were to pursue a discussion with the Greek government about licensure in any area, and they would kind of laugh at the idea of licensing behaviour analysts because there was, three, or maybe a few others who teach. So yes, advocacy is really important here. And just to give an example, it's an autism example. In the US, it's been parents that have advocated for the credential. And now 40, or probably more now, 40 of the 50 US states now mandate intervention for children with autism based on the principles of ABA. And most of those 40 states have licensure and have the BACB credentials built into that. But that's because of parents, that's not because of behaviour analysts. And actually, we're in a very difficult position because we on the whole tend to be polite and professional, right? Because that's kind of inherent in being a professional. So it's really difficult to argue with people that tell you that they know what ABA is, and it really is a treatment for children with autism, and you can't lose your temper. You just have to reiterate the facts and show them the research, which they don't read. But parents are a much more powerful group, and they can lose their temper, and they can tie themselves to railings, and they can do all of these things and have tantrums. And parents are voters, and if there are thousands of them knocking on the door of your local government minister saying, you need to do this, because otherwise we're going to, right? That's a very powerful lobbyist group, an advocacy group, and and that could be the case for so many of the areas in which we would like behaviour analysts to work, and that might start the process rolling in terms of the licensure and regulation. But yeah, I mean, you're right. Maybe you need to probably start with psychologists if that's a problem too. Yeah.
And I agree obviously with what you've mentioned. We have several problems to solve, and we'll make it. Might take a few years, but I'm sure we'll manage to improve all processes and improve what we do at the end, our services. But I think the BCB credential does not have to do with license. I don't think it's directly linked to being able to practice as a licensed psychologist. So in the UK, for example, you'd be able to practice not for being a BCBA. So you would have to recognize your degree first. And I think that it would be the British Psychological Association who would do that, or the professional body. It's the AHP. Yes. And then you would be able to practice. And if you're a BCBA, well, that would be an additional set of skills. But you wouldn't be able to practice because you're a BCBA.
That was not the point that I was raising. The point that I was raising is that if I don't, for instance, Okay. Let's clear one point, because then we wouldn't have to go to the whole discussion if this point is met. For the board certification, does having a licensure is one of the prerequisites basically to join the whole training? No, it's not.
No, it's not. No,
it's not.
No, it's
but
not.
You know what's the problem? In a lot of structures here in Greece where somebody would work like that, besides the whole training in ABA, they would be hired at the position of a psychologist, although they would be practicing, they will be working with autistic people. So that means that if I don't have a license, but I am a trained ABA, let's say a behavioral analyst, then I would not be able to go for that position. That's the point. So if let's make this working scenario. If I am a psychologist, right, and if I go into this, additional training, would I be able to go for a position that would have as a prerequisite to have a license before? And that is just specific to Greece, because maybe that's the way things work here. But what I'm saying is that if we are to disseminate that here in Greece, we have to take into consideration all these, local restrictions, because they are here and we have to meet them. We have to address them. That's the point that I'm trying, because I understand the notion of portability, that I can go and work somewhere else, but what if I want to stay here? I should not be, pushed to work, to go somewhere else and have a job, because here there are some, minor problems that would not allow me to do that here. Not personally, but for someone else.
Well, of course, many countries, particularly European countries, don't have licensure anyway. It's about professional recognition. And because the BACB credential is not recognised in the UK, for example, why it's valuable and why it may be valuable to individuals in other countries is because it functions as a discriminator for those employing your services. So they say, we want a behaviour analyst, but we recognise that for various legal reasons and billing purposes, that person's going to need to be a psychologist, but we're going to pick the psychologist who's a BCBA, or the special educator who's a BCBA, and so on. So at the moment, in the absence of professional recognition, it's just a good discriminator for people who wish to employ someone, and there are many. So there are a growing number of advertisements in the UK and elsewhere, specifically advertising for BCBAs, even though it's not recognised, by the UK government. So there are NHS positions, there are National Health Service positions, there are positions within schools. There are numerous individuals who work offering consultancy across a whole range of different services. So it does have value, even though it's not professionally recognised. Yeah.
That's how it started.
Yeah, and that's exactly. Yeah, and that's how it started in the States. So in many ways, we're maybe a decade behind what happened there, and hoping to catch up very quickly. Please.
The far more common problem, the problem is of course very important, and I wish there would be a solution to it.
Just using it as an example, it's not about me.
The far more common problem, you had an advanced degree and not recognition of your, from the government that you're a psychologist. A far more common problem for certification here is that we have the degree. We have the licensure, but we don't have the advanced degree because we don't have a master's program in behavior analysis, and so our students have to go abroad to get a master in behavior analysis, which is quite expensive to do, of course. It is possible, and the BACB recognizes distance learning in behavior analysis, but the problem is that then our government doesn't recognize this. So you can get a master living in Greece by distance learning, but this master is not recognized by our government. And then you have if you want to continue your training to a doctorate level, so that you can train other individuals, and you can't proceed to that level because you don't have the advanced degree, because it's required to have a master in order to enter logical to do a doctorate. Now, we are working on that. I cannot promise anything. The problem is that we have in the Department of Psychology, as most of you know, a master's program in psychology with a number of different competencies. And I do intend to make a proposal for a specialization in behavior analysis. The problem is that it probably won't pass if I'm the only instructor in that program. And of course, it may kill me as well. That's not really what I'm worried about. I don't mind teaching the additional classes, but we have this very difficult problem of finding qualified individuals, qualified by the government to teach in this program. We are working on it, and we will also be working on getting Behavior Analyst Certification Board recognition for our undergraduate cycle of courses, so that we help people to achieve at least the first level of certification by the certification board. We're doing what we can, but that's going to help. That's our main problem at this point. That we don't have a master's program, and almost nobody has the money now to go study abroad. Yep.
Thank you. There are some people that are considering going abroad, studying. I am one of them. And I'm considering some universities in the UK. My concern is that, okay, I'm going to have the training because I need the training to be an ABA, an analyst. Why should I seek the certification after? It's going to cost me money. I'm going to have to pay for the rest of my life if I want to keep the certification, but I will have the training, because what you say is that training and certification go hand to hand, but I don't think it does go hand to hand. Your organization offer the standards for being trained, for having the credentials to practice, but why should I have the license? Do you understand what I mean? Since it's not going to change anything for me.
Well, I mean, at the moment, that's probably true, which is why I said yesterday and today I offered various reasons why I thought it was important and that you should consider that. But it's not synonymous with the training, just the training. The training is one part of it. The other part of it, and the very important part of it, is the supervised experience bit. So if you have the credential, the certification, that tells people who may or may not wish to employ you, right, which is another reason why you should be interested in this, that this person has been through the prerequisite academic training in behavior analysis, but also she has been through the required supervised experiential bit of the training. Now, in the absence of that, you, like many other people, will be someone who says, I've had the training, but other than a master's degree, there'll be no other evidence that you've been through the process to actually function as an applied behavior analyst, potentially.
And if I can add to what Neil has said, there will be no other way of also proving that you do develop professionally by taking 32, I think. So once you have the certification, it's not only about money, it's very importantly about continuous education. So you have to attend courses and prove that every 2 years you've attended at least 32 hours of training, which keeps you up to date with research and clinical developments. So it's also about telling people, I was certified 15 years ago, but I still develop my skills, so I am up to date, because otherwise I wouldn't have the certification anymore.
I mean, it's the same with any other profession. I mean, imagine a situation where you were to say to someone, yeah, I'm a psychiatrist, and they say, well, hang on a minute, you don't have any professional... And yeah, no, I did a psychiatry degree at university 10 years ago. Yeah, or I'm a lawyer, I can offer you legal advice. I don't have any professional qualification or certificate, but I did a law degree. I mean, they are quite different.
There's one more dimension that I'd like to add to this. The people that trained me in the U.S. were very, very deeply devoted to dissemination of the science. Dissemination means to further our science. Yes, it's a skill that we acquire, and we use it for survival, those of us that are lucky to be able to live off of doing this type of work. But a big part of what we're doing is telling the world, hey, look at this. You know, this is a different way to look at the world. This is a good way to make the world a better place. So choosing this direction is not just about the protection of the consumers, it's also about the protection of us as a profession and the protection of us as a science. I feel that the credential sets a standard, right? So it's not, don't look at it, you can't look at it only from how much does this cost and what are my gains from this financially. At least to me, there's an added dimension that goes well beyond that level.
Yeah, if I could just add.
Could just add to that. We're in a situation where we have to think about every euro that we spend, and so the cost effectiveness is certainly an issue. We also have to think about it, though, as an investment for the field. So it's true that the cost effectiveness for the first people that get certified, that it's not very well known from other people, is going to be much more limited as it will be in the long run. So it is an investment for longer term payoff, for the recognition of skill. That's just in terms of the initial payment for getting certified, because the training, you need it anyway. It is, of course, expensive, the continuing education, but continuing education is something that we require whether or not we're certified by the Behavior Analyst Certification Board. I mean, if we have been effective in establishing the reinforcing potency of understanding the nature and determinants of behavior, that's something that we're just going to be doing anyway. And actually, you know, I have been thinking about all of these dimensions of certification in terms of the financial aspect and the difficult conditions that we have. And actually the requirements for the number of hours of continuing education training are really quite conservative. I mean, it's relative to what you would want to do anyway as a behavior analyst. And it's not necessarily the case. A lot of those are pretty expensive, but it's not necessarily the case that all of that would be expensive. This conference that we made now, that didn't cost a dime to anybody, because of the support of our publisher and Panteion University, would be recognized by the Behavior Analyst Certification Board and serve continuing education credits, because all of us at the end of this weekend will understand behavior analysis better than we did at the beginning. So
the BACB has nothing to do with fees for continuing education. So although some of you may think, well, that sounds really expensive, it doesn't have to be. So, for example, the Hellenic Association could register to become an approved continuing education provider, and it probably should, and offer the continuing education for free. It could do that. Right? So it doesn't have to be expensive.
Right. And the European Association for Behavior Analysis, for example, the conference is very low cost. We've worked very hard to keep the cost for this conference low because of our interest in the dissemination of behavior analysis. And there is zero additional cost for the CE credits, for the continuing education credits for participation in that conference. Other conferences charge you for the administration because for the administration of those credits, but the European Association for Behavior Analysis charges nothing at all in addition to the cost of participating in the conference, which again is quite low. And by the way, our next conference is in September of 2016, if I may make a brief shameless advertising, in Sicily. We just take a hop over from Patra, and it's going to be lovely. September of 2016 at the site of the European Association for Behavior Analysis. You know, I don't know if all of you know, but the Hellenic Association started after our organization with Neil Martin of the 2010 EABA conference in Rethymno. Was then that we realized that we had enough of a momentum to try and get organized as an independent of the university social group. End of commercial.
I think someone had a question up there. I thought, over there, sorry.
I would like to say that I totally agree with Ms. Pelios, sorry for that, and what she said before, that the certification is also for guarantee that what behavioral analysis is, because I had a really bad experience from a person, from a center a couple of years ago, saying that, okay, we use ABA, we know what ABA is, and we use it, behavioral analysis is, and we use it in autism. And it's perfect, it works, but in the end, when I tried to speak with the language therapist, the speech therapist, she was like, okay, it's really simple. When the kid says a word, you will give him a chocolate, okay? And this is all what ABA is. You give something when the child accomplishes something else. And I say, okay, but it cannot be only this. But yes, it is, and look how it works. And she was like that. For a long time, I was, okay, if this is what it all is, I don't think I really care to learn more about it. No. It doesn't work. It cannot be only this. Yeah. It was like 6 months ago that I had a different experience. And then when they talked to me about that, it's funny because I learned about this convenium in an autobus from a girl that I knew like a couple of hours. We were talking about this. And she told me, she's a student here in the Department of Psychology, and she told me, why don't you come to see it? There is a convenium this weekend. So I was, okay, maybe I should give it a try. And after all those speeches, I realized that, okay, it's too much more, but who protects really this knowledge? Because if anyone can go around and say, okay, I've done, and all they had to show me was a certificate by, I don't remember the association, that they have 40 hours training, but there was no degree, there was nothing. I didn't know that there should be something more. I thought that this was enough, and they are certificated, and if they tell me that this is all behavior analysis is, that must be. So that's the reason I totally agree that it's not only in order to protect the client but it's more to protect the knowledge.
Yeah, we agree. Absolutely. These individuals with fairly limited training, they should be working under the supervision of a behavior analyst anyway. I mean, realistically, there can't be everyone working at a centre or a school or an organisation, they can't all be BCBAs. There has to be one person there who is nominally responsible for that work. So those people should be working under supervision, and they should be, actually no, I won't say that. Talked to by the behaviour analyst.
Okay, so hello, my name is Gabriela. I'm very happy to be here with you. I want to say first as a feedback that the students are very happy to have you. This Panteion University is very blessed to have you. And it was quite a very good experience and pleasant experience to be here. Actually, I'm a psychologist and I'm trying for 1.5 years now to get my right to work as a psychologist and also to understand what psychotherapy school I want to be to be trained in. And okay, besides the credential and everything that is necessary to be done, I just want to ask. It's very useful to have a place to the two institutions. I don't know, the 3 BACBs to be united, to have a location to start the trainings. For after this conference, I would like to have some trainings. I would like to start something on this. Where do I go? I will be following you. I'll be writing mails to the guys. What can I practically do after this in order to get together with you until you get your credentials and your anything you have to take in Greece? What are the next steps?
What you have to do next is approach the course director of one of those programs. And
Where do I find? Sorry, on the site, do you have a site?
yes,
A big site?
yes, actually, Katerina.
Because I saw this, but I thought it was a big site.
Okay, Katerina will show you. If you go to the BACB website and approved course sequences, you can search by country.
And this is located in Athens.
Yes, there are 2 located in Athens.
And this information really should be, and we'll do that straight away, on the site of the Hellenic Association Community for Behavior Analysis. It's not at present, but we definitely should have that. Yeah. Yes. Okay. First of all, this information will be available soon on the site of the Hellenic Association for Behavior Analysis. Within the next week, we'll also have a site launch for the Laboratory of Experimental and Applied Behavior Analysis. That all of the material from Panteion will be there. That launch will be this week. So that'll be also there'll be a link from the Hellenic Association for Behavior Analysis site there. And you should also be aware that, first of all, we have this cycle of 7 courses here. The first 3 of those courses are lecture courses. Anybody who wants to can come to those classes. So our door is always open. I never check anybody's ID or whether. But besides that point. And also for your other friends and colleagues who are interested in learning about behavior analysis, you can make an application to the Department of Psychology for following a specific course, and then receive an official from the university certification that you have followed this course. It doesn't say that you were tested in the course, but it says that you have followed the course. And it's possible that credential could be recognized by the certification board. I'm not sure. But certainly, the training is available. The most important thing is that you understand. Yes. These courses, the first two courses, have also been videotaped, and these will be available soon on our site. So the first two courses, Behavior Analysis 1 and Behavior Analysis 2, have been videotaped. You'll have to excuse my Greek, but it comes across the material. Also, there is a YouTube channel for the Ελληνική Κοινότητα Ανάλυσης Συμπεριφοράς, for the Hellenic Association, that has all of the videotaped talks from our previous conference. Michalis Axarlis has made a beautiful presentation of this work, and is working for us. And he's preparing very elegant, very beautiful videotapes of all of the talks from this conference as well. That'll be uploaded within the next couple of weeks, because he has to do some montage, some work on this material. But all of these talks are available. So if there's something that you want to hear again, or a talk that you missed, or if you missed the whole previous conference, you can also find that material there. So we're getting the stuff out there. And there's also there's also an approved course sequence at DIRI, the American College. Yeah. Yes.
There's material outside for you that you can obtain.
Yes.
Or come to Belfast. Thank you.
And also there's a poster outside for the Queen's University program directed by Katerina Dounavi, our own. Part of the, do you have the distance modules for that, or blended? You want to say a few words about that, Katerina? Because
Yes. Well, I wanted to make, because many times I talk to colleagues, and I think it will be useful for you to know that in order to become a BCBA, you need a master's degree in psychology, education, or behavior analysis. Then you need to complete an approved course sequence. Then you need the supervised practice, and take and pass the exam. So if you have a master's degree already from an accredited university, recognized, then you can only take the approved course sequence, and you'll be fine. It could be either, whichever you wish, at any university, by any provider. Now, if you don't have a master's degree by university, you need to be looking only at universities, okay? Because you need that level. Now, our course, very briefly, I hope that the Greek government, because we have an open university, was already recognizing distance courses. Are they not yet?
They're recognized for a SEP, for professional purposes, but not for academic.
Right. Okay, that's great. That's what I thought. Yes. So we had...
For academic credential. Yes? That's fantastic.
No, you have to have an agreement. So TAP has to have an agreement with the university beforehand. Yeah.
Before your studies.
Yeah,
before the studies.
Yes. And if you have the agreement, then it's recognized. Otherwise,
right.
Okay, so but we can make an agreement with the TAP.
Yes. And what I've advised people, because, I mean, that's a great effort. So you don't want to do something and then be hugely disappointed by the fact that it's not recognized. It's just a bureaucratic. So what I would advise people would be make an inquiry to the ATAP. Our university is approved, is on the list of approved universities. It's a UK university, one of, so it's, and the School of Education is also approved. We've got Greek students in the past taking masters in autism or other masters, and these are approved by the ATAP. Now, it's about the masters in ABA that we have had a few Greek students taking that masters already, but none of them has applied to the ATAP yet. So I couldn't say 100% what will happen, but my advice is make an inquiry and take in written a response. That does not mean that it will definitely be recognized 1 year later, but it gives you an indication of what will happen. Yeah. So very briefly, because that's not about my course, it's a blended course, which means you wouldn't need to move to Belfast to take it. You could stay here and take a plane 2 times in a year, or you could move there if you wanted to, but you wouldn't need to move. That's everything. Yeah.
So, yeah, but we need to look into how we can make that arrangement for DOTAP, because this has to happen in advance. The agreement has to be in advance.
Yes.
Yeah? So we'll look into that.
So. Yes. Okay. That's great.
Okay. Because we want to have as many options as possible. Yeah. Yes. Well, that's. Link it to the Hellenic Association for Behavior Analysis. Yeah. I mean, that's really our
that's
mission.
Going to happen, I think, after this conference. Yeah. All the information will be centralised on the Hellenic website,
yes.
The Hellenic Association website. Just to be clear, you don't need a master's degree before you start the coursework. Now, many universities may insist that you only start the coursework but that's not a requirement. The requirement is that you have to have a master's degree and the coursework. So potentially you could do the coursework first and do the master's degree later. But I think...
Sorry to interrupt. I need to feel safe and secure. I need to know that I'm going somewhere and meet someone. For instance, now, I trust Robert.
Okay, I trust him. I saw him in action. I saw his work. I saw his students. I trust him to be my supervisor.
Yeah.
But from a side, and I don't know, from distance, and I like Katerina, and I trust her, but I need, the connection, and to see the person representing the science, to feel safer, to trust it, to want to know it, and if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, all the approved course sequences are listed, as are the examination results. So if you want to pick a training course in another country, my recommendation would be look at their examination results and make your choice based on that discrimination. So don't pick university courses that are producing very poor examination results.
Well, I might suggest that traditionally the Hellenic Association for Behavior Analysis has had an event in late January, the start of February, with Kopitis Pitis. I might suggest that we do, because we're just starting a dialogue about these issues, and I might suggest that we make this meeting, this year's meeting, another opportunity for all of us to get together, compare notes, describe different kinds of what we found in terms of programs, to have an update on what we've been able to manage to do with respect to advanced training. So maybe our next meeting to have this as our agenda, to continue this this discussion. Then it's for me been very, very fruitful today, and we thank very much our colleagues who have come from both from far and from Agia Paskavi.